Where there's no water, there's no life. All living creatures, big and small, need water to survive. And though some may be more adapted to drought, most species will suffer if they go even a short time without it. Although references to humidity and its relationship to snakes shedding and health are prominent features on care guides and YouTube videos, and rightly so, hydration is actually more crucial and less discussed. Hydration not only supports ecdysis, but also digestion and organ function, and therefore the overall health of the animal. If your snake isn't shedding in a single piece, is showing other signs of dehydration, or you don't know what those other signs are, you're going to want to watch this. Today I'll share what I've learned and changed about my own husbandry that could help your snake live a long and healthier life. So let's slither on into it. The correct level of humidity is most certainly a crucial element in a snake's habitat. But let's talk about why. Humidity is a measure of the amount of water vapor in the air, and that water vapor is inhaled by the snake, providing them with hydration. It's not just for their comfort level, nor just their shedding process. If the air is too dry in its environment, a snake's body will attempt to balance the water on the outside with that from within via osmosis. So that osmotic pressure means the snake will lose water from inside its body with every breath it takes. Since there's not an endless supply in there to do so, the snake will become dehydrated. Dehydration leads to all sorts of problems. It can lead to lack of appetite and cause stress, both of which can lead to regurgitation, improper digestion, constipation or prolapse, especially in arboreal species. And both stress and poor nutrition can then lower a snake's immune system, putting it at a higher risk of succumbing to disease. Snakes need hydration in order to maintain the mucus coating in their lungs that prevents pathogens from coming in. So if that mucus is depleted, they can develop respiratory infections. And yes, you heard that correctly. There's a prominent myth that high humidity is what causes respiratory infections, but that's not actually the root cause. It's often a combination of environmental, microbial, or host-specific factors that result in respiratory illness. For sure, if the air is too moist and stagnant, or poor husbandry allows for bacterial buildup or pathogens to enter the snake's system, then yes, too much humidity can assist in the development of illness. This is why good ventilation and routine disinfection are so important. But if a snake is well hydrated and has proper nutrition, their immune system will be able to fight off infections much more readily. So, what are the signs of dehydration? The most obvious one is stuck sheds, or sheds that come off in shreds instead of one single piece. We'll get into shedding support later on in the episode, but there are other more subtle indications that a snake is dehydrated too. Significant creases or dents in their scales or eyes, a silvery haze over their eyes when they're not in a shed cycle, retained eye caps, sharp and high ridges of skin when the snake bends, or an emaciated look. So let's talk about some different ways we can support our snake's hydration to keep their health at optimum levels. Hey friends, just some quick notes before we continue. First of all, thanks so much to my patrons. You help keep me going, and I'm excited to share more special bonuses on there for you as time goes on, including a Patron and Snakes Zoom party that we'll schedule soon, and that I hope will become a regular occurrence. If you're not a patron yet, please consider joining and becoming part of the snake therapy mission and helping to spur the momentum forward. But there are some other ways you can lend your support to all the work that goes into this. You can now buy some snake therapy swag on the new merch store. Any purchases made there are fulfilled by Fourth Wall, but a part of those profits does back bounce to the channel. And if you can't lend monetary support, then showing your love by hitting that like button, adding a comment, and sharing the content and the message is also really helpful and appreciated. Don't forget that you can also join our Discord server, which is a wonderful way to strengthen the community of folks who believe deeply in the benefits that snakes can offer our mental and emotional health, and in the importance of providing our animals with enrichment, choice, and the best lives possible. Thank you all for being here. Okay, back to the show. For one, you can change out their water bowl more frequently. Have you ever noticed that your snake will come out and have a nice long drink right after you refresh their water? Many snakes will simply refuse to drink from stagnant water, so providing them with fresh water more often will increase the likelihood that they'll drink it. Try changing it, if not every day, then at least every 2 to 3 days. And additionally, make sure the bowls are cleaned and disinfected regularly to prevent bacterial growth. Just because they don't look dirty doesn't mean they're actually clean. I've run my fingers over the bottom of bowls that looked perfectly clean and noticed a slight slimy coating at the bottom. That's no good. I certainly wouldn't want to drink that, so why would they? Not to mention the fact that some snakes really enjoy peeing or pooping in their water bowls. Arboreal species may not want to drink from their water bowls at all. Adapted to spending their time in the trees, coming down to drink in the wild would put them at risk for predation. So their hydration usually comes from drinking from water droplets off of their bodies when it rains. An option for helping them is to spray their bodies or their enclosures and branches directly every day. And the larger the droplets, the more easy and appealing it will be for them to drink them. You could also try building a rain chamber for them. I've never done this myself, but I'll put a couple links in the description below to where I found some examples of these described. Helios hates to be sprayed directly. He throws a tantrum if I do it. But I've watched him drink from his bowl while hanging from his branches, so when I noticed a while back that some of his scales were dented, I knew it was time to change his water more frequently to ensure he would drink more often. If you're a DIY superhero, you could try creating a freshwater feature in your enclosure that cycles water through a pump in place of a water bowl. I put some links to some videos down below showing how a few folks did theirs. It's definitely something I look forward to trying. There are also pre-made products like these drinking fountains you could try, but those are usually made for lizards or other small herps. So if you go that route, you'll probably still want a large water bowl in your snake's enclosure in case they want to soak themselves. But at least you'd know there'd be fresh water at all times without having to change their bowl every day. And they're definitely less likely to relieve themselves in that fountain. So as much as people like to say that snakes are easy to keep because they don't require daily maintenance, checking water bowls every day is the responsible way to keep them healthy. Let's circle back to humidity. First of all, if you're at all unsure of the humidity levels that your snake species is adapted to, then I highly recommend checking out the video I did on Zenith a while back, because it'll give you some great tips on how to verify those levels based on climate data from their native habitat. Internet care guides for snake husbandry can be frustratingly contradictory, and they can also be wrong. So I personally stopped implicitly trusting care guides alone. And it's really not that hard to do a little extra digging to confirm that information for yourself. It's also fun. One of the first episodes I ever made was about shedding and humidity maintenance. But my integrity necessitates that I say that although I don't think my information in that episode was bad, it wouldn't be where I'd point people to now if they asked me for advice. I still love the concept that a snake shedding its skin can help us to reflect on the process of transformation in ourselves. I think about that every time one of my snakes sheds. But the practical information I've learned since making that video feels more important to focus on today. And since one of my goals of this channel is to inspire people to continue to learn, no matter how long they've been keeping, I will always be transparent about my own growth as well. There's no shame in admitting you've changed your ways if it actually increases the health of your animals. And the joy in knowing that you're supporting them better is worth every bit of regret you might have about what you've done before. In the end, that only strengthens the argument that we too must shed what doesn't serve us, just as our snakes do their skins. So let's talk about some things I've learned since that old video about how to support humidity levels and shedding that simultaneously support hydration. For years, I took pride in the fact that my snakes had perfect sheds 99.9% of the time, so I just continued doing what I was doing and didn't question it. From what I'd watched or read on the subject, I was under the impression that humidity was what made for a good shed, and that the way to maintain it was to spray down my enclosures once or twice a day, monitor levels with hygrometers, and provide humid hides if I was having trouble sustaining it throughout the whole enclosure. The problems with misting are, for one, it's really not an efficient way of keeping humidity stable. It causes a spike in moisture for a short time, but very quickly evaporates. Another issue with misting is that many folks, including myself, don't clean their sprayers regularly, and this can lead to nasty bacterial or fungal growth in your enclosure and subsequently your snake. I stumbled on a couple of different methods that I decided to try. I started using sheet moss instead of a mister, soaking the moss in water, squeezing the extra water directly into the substrate, and then placing the moss around the enclosure, especially under the heat sources. I also started just pouring some water into the substrate during this process. I found that I only needed to do it once a day instead of misting multiple times a day, and it looked pretty. So as far as enclosure humidity methods go, I can testify that this is definitely an improvement on spraying. But it was actually on accident that I discovered a way to improve upon this even more. Let's talk substrate. For those of us that don't have bioactive enclosures, myself included, the type of substrate you use can make a world of difference. If your snake is a species that needs higher humidity, you're never going to want to use something like aspen. And personally, I think it's a bad option no matter what snake you have. It's very quick to mold with even a splash of water from the water dish. I've used ReptiChip cocoa husk in my enclosures for the better part of 5 years, and I appreciate that it can work for both humid and drier environments. Having multiple snake species, it makes it easier and saves me a little money to buy one type of substrate in bulk and use it for all of them. No matter what you use though, if you're wetting it down, it's important to regularly turn over that substrate as part of your maintenance routine. Any organic material will mold if it's sitting in standing water for a while, even if it's mold resistant. But what I wanted to share was that recently, when my shipment of ReptiChip was delayed and I needed to finish Elora's enclosure, I went to my local reptile shop and purchased some of their soil blend to make up for the substrate I lacked. What you're looking for is soil that's normally used for tropical amphibians and invertebrates. In this case, what I got was a mixture of topsoil, peat moss, sand, and carbon. I thought I'd be disappointed to have dirt in my enclosures, but I was blown away to find that instead of a 30 to 40% drop in humidity from one day to the next, there was maybe a 10% drop, if that. I don't know about you, but going on vacation and having someone else take care of my animals can cause me major anxiety. Leaving detailed instructions doesn't mean they'll be carried out as you would do it, and it can make a holiday or a trip out of town a lot less fun if you're worrying about your snakes the whole time. But after trying the soil mixed with the ReptiChip, I suddenly realized that my anxiety about my animals would be greatly reduced because the humidity levels would stay up for days with little to no upkeep. For me, that was a significant support to my mental health, especially since I'm about to leave for Animal Con next week, and my wonderful husband won't have to hear me stressing over the phone about whether he's gotten everyone's enclosures maintained perfectly every day. Anyway, back to the main point. Humidity is not the only thing that aids in shedding and good health. When I first got Zenith, even though his enclosure humidity was where it was supposed to be, his first shed with me was not. It wasn't stuck, but it was in bits and pieces. So the next time he went into shed, I doubled down on the humidity, and it was a bit better, but still not perfect. Damn it, Zenith, you broke my perfect shed run. Everyone else is doing it. Why can't you? But seriously, I was confused. Wasn't I doing everything I was supposed to? I was a bit worried too because he was young and a species I hadn't kept before. He'd also had some bloating and constipation a couple of times. Now, Anu always has perfect sheds, but one day when I was doing some cleaning and saw she was in her humid hide, all zombied up and getting ready to shed, I noticed she had some urates smeared on her, so I decided to give her a little bath. I rinsed off the urates and put her into a big bowl of water while I changed out the moss in her hide. She really seemed to love just lounging in her bath, but then I noticed her gulp a massive amount of water while she was in there. Again, she always has perfect sheds, but that's when it really clicked in my head. Hydration. So I did some further reading and realized that this was probably the missing link with Zenith. Although everyone says to give snakes a soak if they've had trouble shedding, it's usually recommended as an aftercare to remove stuck shed. And it's true that stuck shed will soften and be easier to remove if they've already tried and failed, but you don't want to have stuck shed in the first place. And the thing is, many snake scales are actually hydrophobic, so soaking them in water prior to a shed isn't going to magically rehydrate them through their skin. That bath, more than anything, will encourage them to drink, or if they don't drink that much, they can also take in some water through their cloacas. It's that internal hydration that will truly help the process before it even starts, aiding in the production of the fluid that builds up between the old and the new skin, that one that makes them look blue during their shed cycle and that helps their new skin develop and separate easily from their old skin. Normally, I avoid bothering or handling my snakes during their shed cycles. They'll hide the entire time, and that's perfectly normal. They need to conserve their energy for their metamorphosis, and they can't see very well and feel vulnerable. So it makes perfect sense that they wouldn't want to be bothered. But I weighed the pros and cons and decided that it was worth bugging them for 10 minutes to give them a soak and see if they'd take a good drink to aid their process. Sure enough, they almost always do. Now, when I gave my first snake a bath decades ago, I did it very, very wrong. So if you're in any doubt about how to do it properly, please watch the next section. I wish YouTube had been a thing back then, so I could have avoided what I put my snake through. If you're an expert already, then good for you. You can skip to the next chapter, but it is pretty cute to watch. So Anu was just fine in a bowl, but you may need to use a Tupperware container and actually put a lid on it if your snake's not in a lounging mood. You're going to put in just enough water to reach the middle part of the snake's body. Otherwise, you could risk drowning them. The water should be at room temperature if you're just trying to hydrate your snake. Many of my snakes seem to actually enjoy the bath, so as long as I'm there watching them, I don't always put a lid on the container. If that's not the case for you, you can help ease any stress your snake might feel by putting something in the tub with them that they can hold on to, like a rock or a paperweight. It could also just be your hands if you want to sit with them while they soak, but if you're leaving them in the tub, they will feel much more at ease if they have something sturdy to grip on. Back to the problem child story. Zenith is a slow grower, so it took a few months before I had the chance to try this with him, but sure enough, once he grabbed hold of his rock and realized he was safe, he began sucking up water like there was no tomorrow. He took breaks, but he drank for long periods 3 times. Once I thought he'd had his fill, I put him back in his enclosure and left him alone and waited. Guess who had a perfect shed a week later? To be fair, it was ripped in two, but that's only because it caught on his branch. Not a scale was missing, so it still counts. And no bloating or constipation issues since then either. In conclusion, humidity is important, hydration is crucial, and the two go hand in hand. It's one of the most satisfying things ever when your snake has a perfect shed, and to know that your animal is healthy. Although how-to videos aren't my normal fare, this does all tie into the mission and the theme of the channel. that snakes have the ability to help us reflect on ourselves, reminding us to adapt and embrace change in order to grow, to be open to trying new things in order to improve ourselves and the care we give our animals. In doing so, we improve our mental and emotional health. With each new thing I learn about caring for them, and with every change I make, I emerge a bit more shiny and iridescent, just like my snakes do after they shed. So I hope that sharing my own progression and advancement can help you and your snakes as well. If it did, please give the video a like and let me know in the comments if you have some tricks I didn't mention, or even better, share your process in our Discord server in the Enclosure and Husbandry advice channel. I'm always up for a lesson, and helping each other to improve our husbandry is the best way to advance herpetoculture as a whole. Remaining open to trying new things only shows strength of character and an admirable respect for your animal's welfare over a pride in yourself and your methods. I'm Shira, and this is Nymeria, and we'll see you next time for more snake therapy.